Hey everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and I am so excited to show you how to make a little stout cooler bag. Now you have a lot of options for this design. I'm going to show you how to make it as is, no pockets, and I just use the Annie Soft and Stable for mine. I still intend on using both of these as little cooler bags. It's just I didn't happen to have any of the Insulbrite or insulating material on hand, but you could definitely insulate these. You could also use a laminated fabric and make it wipeable. So it's a really awesome, fun sew that incorporates a brand new technique that I'm calling self-binding. I spent a lot of time figuring this out, and I'm so glad I stuck with it. We are going to use the zipper gusset to bind this lid, so there are no raw edges on this project. For this, you're going to need a yard of quilt weight cotton. That's what I used. You're going to need 30 inches of zipper by the yard, or a 30-inch zipper that you can cut and sew through. And you're going to need some Annie's Soft and Stable, about a 1/4 yard of that, and you're good to go to make a little stout cooler bag. So before we get started, I want to mention to you there is a supplementary design sheet to go with this project. You can purchase that in my Etsy pattern shop. It includes all the pattern measurements, the supply list, and some photos of the project, as well as the finished measurements. Then it has a link to this video tutorial. So these are great if you want to save them for future inspiration, because then you don't have to search for the tutorial, or you could just flip through them looking for ideas for, say, craft shows or gifts, okay? And when you purchase a PDF, you're directly supporting the channel, and it helps me offset the cost of the material and supplies for our weekly projects. So I'm super grateful for your support, and I love to save you a little bit of time and get all the project information in one spot for you. So if you're interested in that supplementary PDF, you'll find the link to my Etsy pattern shop down in the notes. So shall we get started? Okay, so the exterior of this measures 29 1/4 by 9 1/2 tall, and it is backed with a like-size piece of Annie's Soft and Stable. You have lots of options for the interfacing on this. If you wanted to use like an Insulbrite or some type of insulating cooler material, you could absolutely do that. You also have the ability to line the interior with a waterproof material like the PUL or PUL, or some type of laminated cotton. So I am today just going to show you how to craft this so that it could be a multi-purpose zip top cooler. So what I've done is press this material in half so I could get a true halfway. Then I folded that over again and stopped 5/8 of an inch from that outer edge, because this is going to become the seam here. And so I wanted to get my true quarter marks there, and pressing these lines in is going to be really helpful when we are attaching the base and the lid. So I don't recommend that you skip those steps. Then on top of those press lines, you're going to stitch some vertical guides there so that it makes it even easier to line up those circular lids and bases. So now I have nice clear guides there at the quarter marks, less the seam allowance. And I want to do the same thing with the round base panel, which this is a 9-inch circle. I was fortunate that I had a lid that was exactly 9 inches, so I just put that down and traced my circle, and I had an easy peasy template for this project. You may need to craft your circle with a protractor or fold your paper in quarters and cut like that to get your 9-inch circle. I find if you take a piece of paper and you get it folded and then you measure out the 4.5 inches, you can get yourself a pretty decent circle without a protractor. But check the measurements on some lids and plates in your house and you too might get lucky. So the base is the 9-inch circle backed in the Annie Soft and Stable, and I have marked my quarter marks on that, and I'm going to stitch those in place as well. And then what I want to do is fold this exterior body panel in half and align those right hand sides, and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to join those two edges. And then I want to open that seam up so that it lays nice and flat. And I'm just going to run a row of stay stitching 1/4 inch from the top. See how it will hold that seam down nice. And I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. And then if your fabric has a clear direction, make sure that you are attaching your base so that your fabric is not upside down. And now attaching the base should be a breeze because you're going to line up all of those quarter marks. So the side seam is the first, and then opposite of that you should have a center seam. And then on each side you have your quarter marks. And you're just aligning those edges. The clips are fabulous for these round bucket style projects. And you just want to get all of the main quarter marks in place first so nothing shifts. And then you come back in and add additional clips so that you can keep everything as flat as possible. You may find that you end up stitching in a little pucker when you attach this. Those puckers don't bother me, but if you would like to take a little extra time here aligning this fabric, you can avoid those puckers. The trick is making sure that you get the material aligned on the inside of this little foam sandwich and then capture that in a clip. So you'll need additional clips, and then you'll just have to take care to pull that fabric taut. Okay, and you can peek inside and see what that looks like. And then once you're satisfied that your base is attached securely, go ahead and use 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to attach that to the body, and you just kind of flatten it down and put it up on the machine deck. I like to start at that side seam, and you can work from either side. I think though it's easier to put the body towards the machine deck and then stitch on top of the circle. And as you go, just make sure you move that fabric underneath out of the way as you go around. Okay, so once you've made it all the way around, just have a quick look and kind of open up those little layers of material around that base and make sure that nothing shifted and that the fabric isn't too close together. If there's any little areas that you'd like to touch up that say are less than a 1/4 inch, and I'll show you like an example here. This is still within the 1/4 inch where the fabric came in a little bit, but I don't see any problem there. But if it was less than a 1/4 inch, go ahead in and touch that up. So now this is the exterior, so you can turn that right side out. And at this point, you would have a really darling little round storage cubby, which if you crafted a interior for, you could add a little handle to that and have some really cute storage. So just go along that base there and kind of poke out those edges. And I'll show you a little pucker here right at that arrow, but that is going to be down like that. You're never going to see that. So I think it would be kind of difficult to get that attached absolutely perfectly without any puckers. So I kind of think of those puckers as part of the process, like wrinkles when you get older. All right, so you want to take that top edge of this and get that folded over about 1/2 inch. And I like to do the same thing, get it folded over at the seam and then halfway mark, then the 1/4 marks. And then in between each of those. And then we can set that aside, and we are going to repeat that same process for the interior lining, which is also 29 1/4 by 9 1/2, and that has a 9-inch circle as well. I'm not using any interfacing or foam on my lining, but you definitely have the option to add that interfacing if you'd like. And I have already pressed in my 1/4 marks to both pieces, so I know exactly where to line that up. So I'm going to use my 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and repeat that exact same process for the interior that I did for the exterior. And now I have my interior lining complete. I want to take that top edge and fold that over 1/2 inch. And then we're going to fit this lining inside of our exterior. So we want to line up those side seams first. And I did not stitch in those 1/4 marks for the lining, but I did press them in, so I'm relying on those press lines. If you are not going to finish your project in one sitting, you may want to stitch in the 1/4 marks on that lining in case the press lines don't hold up for you over time. And now if you wanted, you could just run a row or two of stitching around the top edge. You could fold over that edge if you used a contrasting or complementary lining, and you would have a seriously adorable little round storage cubby. But we're going to keep going here, and we are going to make this extra special. So This is another 9-inch circle, and it is going to be the lid for this project. And I have pressed in the quarter marks and back that with a piece of foam. And then I have a 4th 9-inch circle, which also has quarter marks, and I am going to put that on the opposite side. And I am trying to line up those quarter marks, but it's just important that at least one of them has the quarter marks, because we're actually going to stitch this together. So just to clarify, both pieces of material are right sides out, and there is a piece of the Annie Soft and Stable in the center there. And so I'm going to stitch in the quarter marks, and then I'm going to come back across there so that I divide this circle into 8 pieces. And then after you stitch, go ahead and give your lid a good press to sink those stitches in there. And we are going to attach a handle to the top of the prettiest side of the lid. And that is a 5 by 10-inch piece of material, which I've pressed the short edges over a 1/2 inch, folded that in half long ways and pressed, and then brought the outer edges inward to meet on the center press line and folded that over again, pressed to create a little handle that's finished on all 4 sides. I'm going to top stitch all the way around that handle, and then I am going to position it on top of this lid. Alright, so the strap is going to get positioned about 1.25 inches from the edge at center, and you may need to switch to your straight pins, which that one is not very straight. And this is just going to be a little top handle there. So I'm going to go ahead and run 2 rows of stitching on each short end of that handle to attach. You could also add a couple rivets to that. Okay, so I have my handle attached. That's the underside there, which don't forget to clean up the threads. Okay, so I'm going to set the lid aside for a few minutes and work on crafting the zipper gusset for this. So this piece is also 29¼ inches by 5 inches. You're going to press that in half, right sides facing, and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, stitch up those little short ends. And then you are going to turn this right side out. You're going to give it a good press, and you're going to fold that top edge in a 1/2 inch and press so that you have a piece that is finished around all the edges. Alright, and that's what the zipper gusset looks like after it's pressed. You can see I've tucked in those raw edges. Now we want to cut our zipper. Okay, so I think it's easiest to work with zipper by the yard, but if you don't have access to that, you could purchase a 30-inch zipper and you could cut that. Preferably you're going to have a zipper with double pulls on it. So first step is to cut the zipper so that it fits right inside of your zipper gusset. So finished, this is just about 29 inches on the dot. So if you purchased a 30-inch zipper, you would have to trim that up a little bit. So I have this zipper by the yard cut, so it's going to fit inside of there perfectly. If you struggle putting on your zipper pulls like I used to, the trick is to separate the zipper teeth and feed them through the widest end. Forever I was trying to feed them through that back end. So you want to start where that little nose is, I call it, and get one side on and then feed the second side on. And then if you put that on your surface and hold it, you should be able to zip on the pole. It will shift just a bit, but it's not too bad, so that works out. Then zip it all the way to the end without going over, and you can open up that end and then do the same thing. Feed on that little nose first, and then the opposite side. Hold that down and it should zip on. And then you can move your zipper to center there. And I do like to run those poles across there a couple times just to make sure that it's even. And then you can trim up that little bit of excess that happens as a result of feeding on those zipper pulls. And then you're going to tuck one edge of the zipper tape in between this zipper gusset here. And again, I think it's easiest to work with the straight pins. If you use the double stick tape, that's an awesome option as well. Okay, so I'm going to use my zipper foot and stitch as close as I can to that edge. And then I'm going to go ahead and give that a good press. Then I want to bring back over my exterior here, and starting at the front, which is the opposite of that seam, I'm going to count that seam as the rear. So I want to start at the front center there. I am going to get my zipper pulls right in the middle so I know where center is. So that's at 14.5 inches there, and I have my little center stitch marks. So I want to sandwich that zipper tape in between the interior and the exterior layers. So at this point you'll have to remove the clips and segments and transition to your straight pins. When you're positioning the zipper, try to make sure that that lining stays below where the zipper teeth are, and the easiest way to do that is just to feel as you're securing the layers. So this end of the zipper is going to ideally end up at that center back seam. And your zipper teeth need to stay above that top edge, so don't remove too many clips. And as you come around that back edge at that seam, you should have approximately an inch and a half of overlap on the zipper and on that gusset, and that is perfect. Just try to get everything to align nice, and then make sure that that lining isn't coming up too high, because the zipper will get caught in that fabric. So you could just gently test that each side by itself. Don't zip it off the back by accident, because those aren't secure yet. They will be though. Okay, I think my zipper is functioning really nice. I want to leave those pulls towards the front. Now I'm going to remove the machine deck and run a row of stitching all the way around there to secure that zipper to the exterior and interior lining. Okay, once you make it all the way around there, again, carefully test that zipper. Don't accidentally zip those pulls off. And it should function nice and smooth for you. Try to end up with the pulls at the front center again. And then clean up any stray threads that you might have. After you get your zipper attached to the body of this bag, you're going to want to turn the whole project inside out again. So the zipper pulls are on the inside here, and they are open just a bit so that we will eventually be able to open the zipper more and turn this project right side out. Then you're going to take your lid with the handle and position that down inside, so the handle is facing towards the inside, and you are going to take this zipper gusset here and you're going to wrap that around the edge of that lid. So you're going to want to work in the quarter segments again. So we're basically creating a self binding for this project, and you are coming in about 1/2 inch there and sandwiching that raw lid in between that zipper gusset with this project wrong side out. So this part you may want to review because it's easy to do this wrong, and then you're still going to have the raw edge. So just wrapping that zipper gusset around there about 1/2 inch and capturing both layers of fabric and the foam in that little clip and that fold. And you want to try to be consistent with the amount of material you're using up, because this is going to shorten that zipper gusset some, because we're consuming the material here in this self-binding technique. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it fairly consistent. Once you're confident you have that lid nicely sandwiched in between the fold of that zipper gusset, you can put this up on the machine and stitch all the way around there. You can use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for this. What I like to do is try and stitch fairly close to the edge of this binding here so that I'm sure I capture all the layers. So then I can pop my lid right side up, and to me it just looks like binding under there. I want to test the zipper, and that functions really nice. When I'm all done, I'm going to give this a good press. So now what we want to do is attach a little faux hinge to this zipper gusset along the rear and to this exterior panel at that back seam, and that will just encase this little area here and hide that zipper connection there and secure that so that those zipper pulls do not come unattached. So for this little rear hinge here, you are going to need a small piece of material that's 3 by 5, and go ahead and press over the short edges and the long edges. I did put a little piece of Decoville Light in there to offer this some stability. And then I want to unzip here so I can get everything positioned. And working along that back edge, I'm going to center this little hinge right along the top of that zipper gusset on the lid, and then center that down that seam and pin through all those body layers. I want to try to smooth out the fabric as much as I can on the inside there so I don't stitch in too many puckers. And then I'm going to put this up on the machine deck, and at this point you can back your zipper pulls right up to that hinge, and I'm going to stitch all the way around this. You could do an X through it as well if you wanted. It just depends upon your comfort level and how much throat space you have there to fit that up on the machine deck. So I'm going to start right across the top there, and I'm just stitching very close to the edge of that little hinge piece. All right, and now I have a secure hinge on there that will stop those zipper pulls and allow me to unzip the lid and allow that lid to flap over. Now the inside here could use a little piece of cork or vinyl, or even better, if you happen to have a product label, you could attach that right over the top of that, and it's a perfect placement for your product label. In case you're curious, this Freddie and Ma was a company that I designed for many years ago, and I happen to have some of their labels left. These labels are fabulous. They're fusible and woven, so if you're in the market for product labels, search fusible woven product labels. And so they happen to be absolutely perfect for this. And I'm going to do the same thing on this one here, and then that's going to be cosmetically finished there. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I think that this technique is one that you should practice a couple times so you can lock it in to your memory. So plan to make 2 or 3 of these in a row so that you can become familiar with the process. I want to give you the finished measurements on this. I am coming in at 9 inches tall with the lid, and then the base here ends up being about 8 1/4. Ta-da! These turned out great. I am so happy with this design, and I am really pleased that I didn't just settle for that raw edge on the inside of the lid. Again, just make sure when it comes time to attach the lid to the gusset that you have your project inside out, and you are sandwiching the lid in between the 2 layers of the gusset. You're just going to fold that right over that edge. So pay close attention to that, and your little stout coolers should come together with no problem at all. These will hold 7 cans of sparkling water or whatever your beverage of choice is, and you'll still have a fair amount of room for like sandwiches or snacks on top of your beverages. I can also fit my hydro flask in here. So I think that not only is this a wonderful cooler bag, especially if you were to insulate it, but that's not necessary. Like I'm going to use mine without the insulation and just put ice packs in them. but I think it also makes a wonderful project bag, a great bag for children that could pack their little toys in it. It could even be a darling little overnight case if you have little ones that'll be doing sleepovers with grandma or best friends or things like that this summer. Next Friday, I'm going to be back to show you how to make a key fob and lanyard set. I have a craft fair coming up and I need to make 100 of these for that event. So I'm going to show you my process for that. And then the Friday after that will be the last session in our beach bag theme sewing series. I'd love to take your special requests if you want to drop those in the comments as well. I'll see what sparks my creative genius. So until we meet again, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Thank you so much for sewing with me.